Welcome to the UN Brief. This is the press conference where I had the chance to ask a few questions to Maria Ressa, a Nobel Prize laureate who is now the Vice Chair of the Internet Governance Forum that had its meeting to prepare for the Kyoto conference that will take place in October. Alongside her was the newly appointed chair of the Internet Governance Forum, Dr. Vint Cerf. He is the chief internet evangelist at Google and also a figure that is very well respected and has been instrumental in the development of protocols for the internet and the World Wide Web. Thank you for watching and listening to the UN Brief, and don't forget to subscribe.
We propose that the Internet Governance Forum should evolve to become more output-oriented. Given its 18 years of experience in multi-stakeholder work on Internet and digital ecosystem governance matters, we believe that the Internet Governance Forum is the best vehicle for considering the challenges and opportunities implied by the establishment of the Global Digital Compact. The Internet was invented 50 years ago and went into operation 40 years ago in 1983. The World Wide Web was announced in 1991 here at CERN in Geneva and became globally visible by 1995. Tens of thousands of independent networks all cooperate to form the Internet. The World Wide Web application rides on top of the global Internet as its most used application. The Internet Governance Forum was established at the close of the World Summit on the Information Society in Tunis in 2005. Its first meeting was in Athens in 2006. It's a multi-stakeholder body comprising civil society, the private sector, academia, the technology community, and government representatives. Its mission is to articulate the opportunities, challenges, and potential paths forward for the best use of this global digital ecosystem. 150 national and regional multi-stakeholder Internet governance forums have self-organized over the past decade or more to bring local attention to the challenges of the Internet and the World Wide Web applications, and to continue and to contribute to the annual IGF meetings. The leadership panel of the Internet Governance Forum was chartered and appointed by the Secretary General of the United Nations with the goal of amplifying and spreading the messages of the IGF, supporting its operation, helping to shape its agenda, and assisting it to respond to the changing demands of the emerging Internet and World Wide Web ecosystem. The Global Digital Compact is being developed with the facilitation of Sweden and Rwanda and is assisted in this work by the Office of the UN Technology Envoy. It seeks to create a global framework for the safe and secure use of digital technologies such as those we use daily with the Internet, the World Wide Web, our smartphones, laptops, and pads. Once in place, the implementation of the provisions of the Compact will require multi-stakeholder collaboration to ensure that the Internet, the World Wide Web, and other digital ecosystem components can meet the expectations of the Compact. The Internet and the World Wide Web have delivered massive economic, educational, and social benefits to its over 5 billion users. But the excitement of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, cryptographic applications, and social media, and the emergence of misinformation, disinformation, and other harmful behaviors have led to renewed attention on the need for broad agreement on the responsible use of these powerful technologies. The leadership panel believes that in addition to preserving all the constructive values of the Internet and the World Wide Web, we must also respond to the potential risks and harms that have arisen in recent years. The internet we want must address those concerns while fulfilling the aspirations of the Global Digital Compact. I would like to invite my Vice Chair, Maria Ressa, to summarize the human rights concerns that have become apparent as the internet expands to serve the world's population, and the role that the Leadership Panel and the Internet Governance Forum can play to address these concerns.
Social harms, well, the harms aren't just social, they're political. Many of the things I used to study counterterrorism and the kinds of marginalization that we're seeing today, all of this, on the counterterrorism part, what used to radicalize people are now in our politics. So offhand, just the 3 points, right, which we've raised in the IGF. The first is it is by design. So I'm focused more on the apps on top of the internet, which the father of the internet helped create. But of these, you have heard me say this over and over and over again, when lies spread 6 times faster than facts. That is an MIT study from 2018. It is the beginning of the cascading failures that makes it impossible to have facts. Without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without that, we have no shared reality. We cannot solve any problem, let alone the existential problems we're dealing with. Some of the issues that we're starting to grapple with now, and it is amazing to have an incredible group of people to do this and to hopefully harness all of all of what the United Nations can do through the Internet Governance Forum. I think just on the last part of that, what can we do right now? These cascading failures are impacting your kids, are impacting your independence, right? Because if you don't have integrity of facts, you cannot have integrity of elections. So this goes throughout our entire society. Finally, the last part, and you will have just seen the headlines of a prominent politician who resigned yesterday, a woman politician. It is those who are marginalized, who are already marginalized in the physical world, who are further marginalized. And I would point that women in particular, whether they're journalists, researchers, or politicians, are attacked significantly more. In the Philippines, as early as 2017, women journalists were attacked at least 10 times more than men.
I do want to emphasize how important it is for us to simultaneously preserve all of the demonstrated values of this online ecosystem while defending against the things that Maria so clearly points out. This is not a trivial challenge, but it's one that the Leadership Panel and the Internet Governance Forum are focused upon and have been for quite a long time. The amplification effects of these online technologies have both a positive and a negative side, and Maria is careful to show how and why we have to constrain some of the potential behaviors and some of the potential side effects. What we need is not detailed regulation as much as it is principles that can apply over a long period of time. The technology is changing very rapidly, and overly detailed regulations will frankly not keep up. We met yesterday with a number of representatives from the European Union, and that point was made several times by several of the participating ambassadors. So we want something that will work effectively over time. The second thing that's very important is that we don't want to lose all of the positive features, but we absolutely need to build mechanisms into the system that provide for the kind of safety and security that Maria so carefully lays out. Well, thank you. That's question number 102. Lots of people have been asking this. First of all, let me say that artificial intelligence is a very general term. It was invented in the 1960s by John McCarthy. The Advanced Research Projects Agency, which created the ARPANET, the predecessor to the Internet, was researching and supporting research in artificial intelligence way back then. Now, 60 years later, we have discovered that some of the methods for achieving this artificial intelligence have advanced pretty dramatically. I would like to use a different term, though, if I might, and that's machine learning, because, in fact, that is the current mechanism that is producing such startling results with the so-called large language models. It's terribly important for our journalists and the rest of the population to understand that not all of the value of machine learning is exhibited in these large language models, which seem to be so glib and so easy to interact in human terms. They are amazingly confident as they assert falsehoods. And because they sound very human, it's easy to accept the discourse incorrectly. But let me give you some other examples of machine learning applications that are incredibly powerful. At Google, as you must know, we run lots of data centers, and they get hot because the computers consume a lot of energy and they radiate a lot of heat. So you have to cool them all off with airflows and fans and sometimes even water cooling. It takes a fair amount of power to cool the data center. So we used to, once a week, control and reconfigure the valve and pumping systems to cool the data centers and try to reduce the amount of energy required to do that. Someone got the idea that we could train a machine learning algorithm to optimize the cooling system and reduce the amount of power required to get the same result. So after several weeks of training, we managed to get a machine learning algorithm to reduce the power requirement by 40%. And that's a significant reduction, a very powerful tool, and it has nothing to do with misinformation and disinformation or anything else. It just has to do with optimizing a particular function. The same kind of argument can be made from some work by another sister company called DeepMind, which some of you will know announced that it had built a machine learning algorithm that figured out how proteins fold that are produced by the DNA of the human body, but they folded all 200 million possible proteins. Now, why is that important? Well, once you know how a protein folds up, you know what its shape is. The shape is what allows that protein to interact with various parts of your biological system, which means we might be able to use that knowledge to find new cures for various and sundry diseases or to improve people's health. These are only two out of literally thousands of possible examples. So let us not throw away the value of machine learning in the face of the peculiarities of large language models. So let me give you one other example that shows you why the large language model is simultaneously intriguing and of concern. I decided to take one of these chatbots and ask it to write an obituary for me. And I know that sounds a little macabre, but I thought, well, the obituary format is probably well known to the large language models because there are lots of obituaries to be found in the World Wide Web. And of course, these large language models are trained by consuming content on the World Wide Web and building models of discourse based on what it reads in the World Wide Web. So I assumed that it would know how to produce an obituary. And I also made the assumption that because I've been involved in the internet for literally 50 years, that there was probably some information about me also available. So I asked it to write an obituary, and it completed a nicely formatted obituary. We're sorry Dr. Cerf passed away, blah, blah, blah. Then it talked about my career, and then it talked about the family members that were left behind. Well, it gave me credit for things other people have done, and it gave other people credit for the stuff I did. And when it got to the family members, it made up some family members that I don't have, at least I don't think I have. So the question was, how could this possibly happen? And just to give you a cartoon model of how this can happen and why this is such a challenge for the machine learning and large language model builders, is that imagine for a moment, Maria Ressa and I are connected with the leadership panel. So there are probably some web pages that have her name and my name and our bios. But the machine learning system is consuming all this text, and it doesn't necessarily notice that this word or these words came from Vint Cerf's bio, and these other words came from Maria's, because we're both on the same web page. Now remember, this is just a cartoon model, so don't rake me over the coals for lack of precision. But the large language model could easily conflate facts about Maria with me because we're sort of co-located on the same web page. So it's easy from that simple model to understand how this conflation can happen and how factual material can still present counterfactual information. So we have a job to do, and that is in the technical community, and that's to understand how and why these things happen, and how do we discipline, so to speak, the large language models not to be confused by this kind of conflation. So my view right now is that we're rather at an early stage in understanding how to accomplish that objective. For any of the Freudians in the group, my little other cartoon model of this is that what we have is the id and the ego have been created artificially, but we're missing the artificial superego to discipline the behaviors of the id and the ego. So that's my somewhat non-technical response to what do we do with this. It's still incredibly powerful stuff. So we don't want to lose its utility, but we clearly have to discipline it. Maria, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
So I agree. Vint talked about id and ego, and then it's lacking a superego. My perspective is that it shouldn't be released publicly until it develops a superego. But the problem, of course, is that the large language models, these companies require us to actually make the product, right? When OpenAI came out and they had 100 million subscribers, of course, that's now been beaten by Threads. But when that happened, we are the ones that are creating the next phase, that are helping these companies fine tune it. And if that is the case, there need to be protection for those of us, because, there was a Brussels man who committed suicide because of what an AI fed him. There are many other harms that are there now. But the other things is to think about businesses, right? Since these are huge businesses, what happens to copyright? Right? When it is fed, there are now legislation being tested. There are cases that have been filed in different jurisdictions. Everything that is fed into that is then going to be reused to create more value for that company. Will the ones who actually created that, will the copyright, will you get anything from it? There are cases now on privacy issues. Will your data, will you get anything for that? I mean, of course, this is generative AI is what we're talking about on the large language models, but go back to what AI really is. The first contact of humanity with AI is machine learning, and that is in our digital platforms that connect us. These are the social media platforms. And again, they were optimized for profit at our harm. Our data essentially was picked up. Everything that you put into whether it's YouTube or whether it's Facebook or whether it's Twitter, if you're still there, you essentially, machine learning comes in and takes everything you've posted and creates, they say, a model of you that knows you better than you know yourself, because it has all your relationships, it has everything. Change the word model to clone, right? So you're cloned, and then the companies come in and use AI to take all of our clones and make that the motherlode database that they can then use to micro-target. Advertising in media in the old world is not the same as micro-targeting. This takes your weakest moment to a message and feeds it to you, right? So this has turned us into Pavlov's dogs. Those harms are documented. They haven't been addressed. Our governments, our institutions are slow to address them. And those of us on the front lines are the ones paying the price for that. It is generating tremendous profit, but we are paying a huge price. So the last thing on large language models, garbage in is garbage out. And what has gone into these large language models? A lot of the unstructured data of social media, which prioritizes the spread of lies over facts. Again, that MIT 2018 study, right? So if that's the case, what about fear, anger, hate? And this goes back to, I'll end with this, how our biology has been hacked by the technology. Another brilliant man actually said this. He studied emergent behavior in ants, right? E.O. Wilson said that the greatest crisis we face is our Paleolithic emotions, our medieval institutions, and our godlike technology. So in the first instance, the first contact with AI, it was our fear, anger, and hate. That was how our biology was hacked. In the second contact with generative AI, we're seeing the kind of, and I will say, the way the large tech companies have rolled it out, they've tried not to anthropomorphize it. But what we are seeing increasingly is how our loneliness is weaponized. This is moving through our biology, triggering our emotions, and it is taking away agency from real people. So these are the dangers. We will find solutions because we cannot not, right? But our window for finding those solutions, proposing them, and taking a multi-stakeholder approach to implement them, that window is closing.
So I feel compelled because of
Go.
our normal interactions here to, yes, just to remind everyone that not all of the interactions with the large language models have negative consequences. They are quite empowering. People who are trying to write software get help. People who are trying to write documents and things like that get help. And so we know that these can be potentially very, very advantageous. The problem, of course, is disciplining them to avoid all of the concerns that Maria has so correctly raised.
So how is the Internet Governance Forum going to be addressing issues related to the fact that machine learning conflates information that scrapes from the web and creates many issues in terms of the veracity of information? What do you see, what is going to be the role of the Internet Governance Forum in that aspect?
The Internet Governance Forum has been dealing with questions like this for some time, not necessarily specifically large language models, which are relatively new in the scene, but all kinds of other uses of the Internet and the World Wide Web have been part of the discussions in the IGF literally ever since it was started 18 years ago. And so the IGF absolutely will be wrestling with these problems. The multi-stakeholder character of the Internet Governance Forum is what gives it its value and power. So many different participants with different perspectives and different experiences allow us to see a much more full picture of both the hazards and the benefits of these online technologies. So I have no doubt that there will be perhaps 6 or 7 specific discussions in the upcoming IGF in Kyoto on this topic and on related topics as well. Bear in mind that large language models are not the only thing that we are concerned about in the World Wide Web and the Internet. And so the Kyoto conference will be covering quite a large range of questions having to do with safety and security and privacy, economics, benefits and hazards in the online environment, and the expectations that we should all have of an Internet that is constructive and safe. So we will have a rich discussion, including responding to some of the questions you've raised. So thank you for asking that.
And it's interesting, the tech companies will actually say they hold a mirror up to us, right? But that is not just wrong, it's not just a lie, it is also a deflection. It is the design of these platforms. Responsibility and agency, those are, accountability and agency is what Vint talked about. I'll talk about it from the fact that technology is the least regulated industry globally. No drug company would be able to roll out a drug and give drug A to this part of the room and drug B to this part of the room and do a real-time test on real people and then, oh, you on this side of the room died, sorry. This has happened in tech, right? The UN has sent people to Myanmar, and the UN, and it was under Marzuki Darusman, who was former Commissioner on Human Rights in Indonesia, a former justice minister, right? He came back with the same results Meta did, which is that the way the platforms were used and designed led to genocide in there. So has anyone been held accountable? No. Let me talk about it from my own personal experience. When you get 90 hate messages per hour, That is not normal, nor should a journalist, a researcher, or a politician be subjected to that. But those information operations, information warfare, free speech used to pound someone else to silence and to change a public narrative, this is allowed. Who gets away with this with impunity? The tech companies and the actors, right? So we now have all of this documented. I think, you look at this Dutch minister, a top Dutch minister who would have led the opposition party. She just resigned yesterday because of intimidation and threats. Enabled by what? Information operations on these tech platforms. No woman or LGBTQ plus should have to deal with this. We are protected from this in the real world. Segregation is illegal in the real world. Yet in the virtual world, it's allowed for profit. I think the last part is, if you think about algorithms as a repetition, like, let's say you make an algorithm of the decisions, editorial decisions I make. They can be good, they can be bad, but you amplify the bad and it's repeated millions of times. This is the reason why we need to do this in testing, right? It should be, this is engineering, this is technology, and it should not be tested in the real world on real people. Having said that, let me switch to what Vint would say, which is, yes, there are tremendous positives. Rappler was founded on, if Facebook had better search, I probably wouldn't have built a website. But it didn't, and I built a website, and thank God I did, because, at one point, Facebook told all news organizations that video was getting more views. Except a year or so later, we found out that the data was wrong, and they knew it, and they continued to propagate it, while news organizations fired editorial people and hired video people. It wasn't real. Who is held accountable for these? These are changes in our public ecosystem. I think accountability first begins with the same way that a news organization is held legally accountable. In the United States, Section 230 gives impunity to the tech companies, the American tech companies. It was so interesting that with TikTok, it was much easier for American legislators to act, right? This should not be the case. We should be looking at the safety of people on these platforms.
How do you see that the IGF could address the question of copyrighted material that's being scraped? How are you going to deal with the issue? And give me your comments. Elaborate a little bit on it, please.
Actually, I don't know to what extent the IGF has addressed this question. It's a relatively new issue. I mean, copyright has been around for a very long time. But the large language models have raised a new kind of question about what is a derivative work, and who should benefit from the production of these kinds of works with the tools that are now evident. So my guess is that this will be something that will be discussed in Kyoto, but I don't have anything to report from the previous meetings or the ones that we've been undertaking here in Geneva. Maria?
We haven't yet gotten to it, but, my position on copyright is clear to me, and we will debate it amongst ourselves. I think, again, the strength of the IGF is, Vint actually rolled this out, right? There are 150 different groups ground up, right? But it works with big tech, with industry, with governments. That's rare. I would have loved to have worked with government, and before the time, we joke in Rappler, before President Duterte, news organizations did. So the question here is, how can we build a bottom-up and top-down process that will help address these problems as quickly as the tech companies roll them out?
Thank you for watching and listening to the UN Brief. And don't forget to subscribe. I'm your host, Maya Plants. This is a production of the UN Brief. Thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the button and subscribe.